Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have some things to discuss today. We'll start with our normal pre-show. Ack will be here in a few minutes. We will have Kevin Allen tomorrow at 1 p.m. Russ, go ahead.
Well, I was reading on Twitter, and I don't even know if I got the full story, but Harrison Ford is probably too old for a pilot's license. I feel confident saying that. I think he walked across the runway or something.
No,
or his plane crossed the runway. I couldn't tell.
Well, first of all, he's within the last few years, he crashed his plane.
He did have a crash, yeah.
And he was injured. I also remember an incident a few years ago where he was like taxiing down the wrong runway the approach way to the terminal, going the wrong way. There are certain pathways that you have to go the right way. And apparently yesterday what he did was he crossed a runway where a plane was landing.
That's right. That's where you with the plane. Yeah.
And for those who don't remember, I think one of the deadly, and he's obviously flying like a single end or a single person or maybe two or three people on the plane. The greatest airline tragedy that happened, I think it was in the late 70s in the Canary Islands, was two massive jumbo jets. One was taxiing across the runway as the other one was taking off, and they slammed into each other. So it's not a laughing matter, but
no. I mean,
yeah.
Look, he is getting older. I think he broke his leg on the set of Star Wars. Like, it's been one thing after the other. There should be an age limit for a pilot's license. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Maybe, but I think with his record of multiple issues, just like somebody whose vision is gone or the reaction time is gone when it comes to driving, it's time to take his license away. But, will they do that for the pilot of the Millennium Falcon? I don't know. It depends on whether,
wasn't it the Millennium Falcon that crunched his leg? I think it was.
I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I didn't like that Star Wars movie anyway.
Really? Wow.
Of the new ones,
Just to show you that there should be an age limit. The oldest active pilot right now is 63 years old. That's in the Navy.
Oh.
But I doubt you would find one that's 77 years old in the airline industry. I would highly doubt that. I did
find, there, if you go online, and obviously what's gone on recently in terms of excess time on our hands, a lot of people have been going on YouTube and searching out things. And there are these like little short videos of like, say, an airborne ranger watching like movies about snipers or military tactics and picking out like the flaws in it. Well, they had a Navy pilot pick out the flaws of the Top Gun preview, the Tom Cruise movie that's coming out.
How many dozens did they find?
Well, they cut it. It was limited to 15 minutes. I'm sure it ran a lot longer. But the first thing he said was, Tom Cruise is in his 50s.
Yeah.
There's no way he is, doing what somebody of his age.
That was the first thing I said, if you remember. Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's part of the plot. Obviously, it's not real. It's like, okay, he should be a 2-star admiral, and he's a captain, and it's sort of the James Kirk narrative from Star Trek. He doesn't want to be an admiral because he still wants to be commander of the Enterprise out there in space.
Right. So getting back to Star Wars, yes, Harrison Ford, here was the tagline. He was hit by a hydraulic metal door on the Pinewood set of the Millennium Falcon. So he's even too old to fly the Millennium Falcon.
So he's giving it over to
Chewie's older.
Oh, Chewie's older.
Yeah, Chewie's way older.
Actually, didn't the guy inside Chewie die, or was that C3?
No, he didn't die. They just got a new guy, and he's a young Finnish guy. I've actually met him. Cool dude.
Basketball player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a basketball player, but no, they just retired him. But no, Chewie's way older. So anyhow,
okay,
let's move on.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, April 30th, the longest month of the millennium, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine, and bored as tears.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. TFB.
And I'm Michael Agello. I'm trying to spice things up here. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right. Before you go, Jan, we're going to have to talk about the playoff format that came out, or the proposed playoff format, because I have some problems with it. Of course, seems to love it. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Yeah. Now, but Russ, you let me in on some news about Sorokin, Ilya Sorokin, the Islanders prospect who everybody is expecting to come over and sign a deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, so about an hour ago, I got word that his agent, Shumi Babayev, and I may be mispronouncing, I'm sure I am, has gone back to CSKA and trying to get a massive one-year deal, or the most money he could get in a one-year deal. Now, you would say, why is he doing that? Well, if you remember what I came on the show and said about a week or two ago is that Sorokin is looking for assurances. And I'm sure by assurances, and this is where I'm guessing, but I'm sure by assurances it means you've got the backup job, just come over. And we talked about how Lou Lamoriello probably doesn't want to do that. Well, the other part of the discussion is right now today, and again, Sorokin's thing has changed a few times, but right now today they're not happy and they don't feel like Sorokin's going to get a fair shot. So that's why they're looking for more money, and they may ask the Islanders to trade his rights. Now, they haven't done it yet, but again, the thing that people have to remember is, yes, a lot of times a GM can play hardball with certain players. You can't play hardball with an already established Russian star who has options. Right. This is the problem. That guy, and I don't care what fans say. Fans can say whatever they want. Like, the Islanders fan perspective is it's his job to win. Right. Well, that's great, but he doesn't want to leave $2 million on the table with the chance of coming over and winning a backup job with, again, not knowing if he'll ever get the job over Varlamov, because it's up to Trotz. It's not up to him. So right. He may opt for one more payday, and if he feels like he's not getting a fair shot, then he may ask him to trade his rights, and then it's up to the Islanders whether they want to or not. But Sorokin has options, and that's what makes him different than a lot of other goalies out there. And I think the difference with Shesterkin was the Rangers probably said there is a path for you, and they may have given more assurances than the Islanders. We'll never know. But it worked out well, and I think when Sorokin sees how it's worked out for Shesterkin, he wants at least that.
Now, Shesterkin had I believe a one-year deal. It was an ELC, Jan. So in the American Hockey League in Hartford, he's making $70,000 US. But as soon as he gets called up to the NHL, he's making close to $1 million. Sorokin is in the same situation. He's turning 25 in August. It's probably going to be a one-year ELC. And the thing is, most of these Russian players, some of the Swedish players, they have that European reassignment clause that if they don't make the NHL, they can go back to Russia or Sweden or wherever. But in a one-year contract situation, if you allow them to go back to Europe, they may never come back. So,
right. So that was part of the concern with Shesterkin, right? If he wasn't going to get called up, would he return? But right. The other piece of the puzzle, Russ, I think that also makes him different from Sorokin, is there a lot of information that came out, shortly before he got called up and right after that. Lundqvist was the guy he looked up to for years, right? He was the standard bearer. There was a benefit of him being on a roster and a team with the guy who he looked up, who he considered his idol, which Sorokin doesn't necessarily have. As much as he has a good relationship with Varlamov, it's not the same type of thing where your idol, quote unquote, or your hero is in front of you and playing with you every single day when you're in the locker room with him. So I don't think you can discount that factor, which gave Shesterkin a reason to join the Rangers. Plus, as you said, Mike, he probably saw also when Lundqvist was struggling and he was excelling in the minors that there was a path, right? That he knew the end state as well for when Lundqvist's contract ended, and saw that there was going to be an opportunity for him to take a hold of the job based upon his play over in Russia.
Yeah, and Russ, the thing is, if Sorokin comes over, they're not guaranteeing him the job. The Islanders might sign another goaltender because of expansion the following year, and they decide to put Sorokin in Bridgeport, then his leverage in terms of getting the next deal I mean, he's probably going to have to take another 1-year deal. I believe he's arbitration eligible after that 1 year. He's going to have no leverage to get anything more than a league minimum contract. It's not beneficial for him to put himself in that situation. He needs to get assurances from Lamoriello. And as we know, as we spoke about yesterday, Lamoriello does not give assurances to anyone. So,
well, he might have to make an exception. Here's what Sorokin approximately made last year. You never know if these websites are 100%.
Sure.
But it said the base was around 1.5, and then with bonuses could be well over 2 million. So again, like Jan was saying, like you were saying, he comes over. Let's say they have a third goalie in camp, because they might. And they're like, yeah, you know what? We want Sorokin to start down with Bridgeport. Well, then he goes down to 70,000. He's going to leave because, yes, he can make over $2 million or around $2 million with bonuses that he probably reaches every year in the KHL. Like, it's simple math. He does want to play in the NHL, but why give up that money if it's because there are players that look like they'd be slam dunks here and they weren't. And so I think the Islanders are going to have to offer him the backup job. Like, Ilya, come over and be the backup for Varlamov. I think they're going to have to say it like that, and then I think he would come over. If they don't say it like that, I'm not sure he's coming over.
And Ilya, you know, with Varlamov's history, you start as the backup, and probably by midseason you're going to be the starter because Varlamov is going to get hurt like he normally does.
But here's the other thing, and this is a fair thing. I don't know who the other goalie is going to be in Bridgeport. I'm not sure who the next guy up is. But if it's somebody close that has had some NHL experience, if Trotz doesn't like what he sees in Sorokin, he wouldn't be opposed to getting somebody else called up and using him over him, because you have to play a certain way for Barry Trotz. We've seen that with goalies. That's the other thing, the other part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, last year they had well-traveled minor leaguers and Christopher Gibson and Jared Careau, so they really had nobody else.
That job would be safe for Sorokin, but if they bring in someone else, then it wouldn't be as safe. So I think that's where we're at with this. And so could this all be moot by tomorrow? Sure, because it's Russia, but I think the fact that they're going to the well one more time tells you that this isn't going smoothly. That's for sure.
Right.
And it didn't go smoothly with Matthews, as we pointed out.
Right, and we're talking way different thing. And by the way, I did.
No, but it's the same guy.
Yeah, no, the same guy in terms of Lamoriello. But it's weird that today is the 4th anniversary of the Leafs winning the lottery for Matthews. I just saw that online today, which was weird. How time flies when you're having fun.
I mean, I'll give you one quick Matthews story. Is I went to a USHL tournament at Eisenhower Park, which is now the Islanders, practice rink, and wanted to see the U.S. team. There were guys I wanted to see there. I wanted to see Casey Fitzgerald, and I wanted to see 2 or 3 other guys. First play of the game, all of a sudden this big guy's bearing down the ice, going really fast. Doesn't get a scoring chance, but I noticed he pierced the zone really well. And I look on my sheet, and I'm like, all right, Austin Matthews. All right, I'll keep an eye on this guy. A couple plays later, he's got another, just about a breakaway, gets a great shot on goal. He was dominant for 2 periods. I was like, wow, this guy Austin Matthews is really something. And that was probably right after the season he broke his leg, so I knew nothing about him because he didn't even play much before then. And so, that was when I really noticed him.
I think he was he broke his leg when he was 15, so he was probably 16 at that point.
Yeah, but I probably saw him 17, so it was probably 2 years after.
Yeah, because then he made the World Junior at 17 and 18 and played 2 consecutive years, and he was really good as a 17.
He may have been 16 on that team. I would have to remember. It's hard to say, but that's a nice rink. I don't know if you've seen that rink, Jan. No. I was asking Jan if he's been to it.
Nope.
Oh, you haven't? It's really, really, really nice, and it's really well done.
So May the 1st, and we'll talk about this tomorrow because I'm sure we're gonna have a slew of signings. Maybe Sorokin, but other ones as well. If they weren't announced already, like Barabanov, I know was announced by the Leafs, but he was never a draft pick.
Right.
So but players who are draft picks. Now, Russ, I saw, well, Jan, I saw the report. We'll go to you first. I saw the report yesterday coming out from some reporter out of Minnesota, basically rubbing their hands with glee that the wait is finally over with, and that Kaprizov is going to sign. And I think that's news that I think is big for Minnesota, because this is not an inconsequential player. I think the anticipation of Kaprizov coming over is probably the highest for a Russian player since Panarin.
I mean, we've talked about Kaprizov for several years. I think he was viewed as the number one prospect not in the NHL for a while. Mm-hmm. There was also a lot of questions as to whether or not he would end up coming over, right? And until we actually see the signature on the contract, that's when I'll firmly believe it. But him coming over would be a huge coup. And as we talked about the other day, what's going to happen with Parise, you have to wonder, with him coming over, does that change their mindset at all in terms of what they're going to do with Parise? I mean, Kaprizov, having basically is a top 6 winger probably from the get-go, and you would kind of think that he's going to step into a role that's could likely filled by somebody else right now. But if Minnesota can free up some more cap room and then utilize that space elsewhere to get a younger player, that would be interesting in terms of the where they go moving forward. We talked about what's going to happen in net, right, with Stalock and Dubnyk. Their defense is a fairly solid defense. So if you add a forward who is a forward who's probably going to be as good as Kaprizov when he hits the NHL, that has a material impact on them, but also on the division as a whole.
Now, there were a slew of signings announced late yesterday that went hand in hand with the IIHF agreement, the extension for 1 year. We've talked about Linus Sandin, the brother of Rasmus Sandin, signing with the Flyers. A number of others, Victor Bradstrom with the Detroit Red Wings, Theodore Lundstrom with the Edmonton Oilers, Johannes Kinval with Calgary. Russ, the most prominent of these is Nils Höglander, with the Canucks. He was a second round pick, 40th overall, in Vancouver. Not a big kid, 5'9", 185 pounds, but really impressed at the World Junior.
Yeah, he's solid though. He's very strong. When he's around the net, he does make things happen, and definitely is hard to move off the puck. Even at that size, he's very strong, and he's worked out like a beast the last couple of years. So this is a guy who, in the SHL, he's starting to put up some numbers. And remember, he is only 19. So the fact that he's doing it at 19 is impressive. I think they'll send him back for another year at the SHL, and by this year, he'll probably be, the next year there, will score around 20, 25 goals probably. And then I think he'll come over. I mean, that's really good. Something to mention about Kaprizov is, because I just went back and looked at my notes because I hadn't for a little while. His big thing is he's a big wrist shot guy. And so he's not a guy that's going to be like big and powerful like Radulov. He's a different player than that. He's not as big. He's not as powerful, but he's super skilled. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't know if people realize that part of it.
Yeah, I'm just going to make the Höglander for a second. He turns 20 in December. So it's possible he would qualify for coming over and playing in the American Hockey League. He could play in Utica if they want.
He could, but I don't think they'll do that because I don't know how else to say it. Utica is not the greatest place. And do you really want one of your best prospects in your organization to play at Utica when he could play in the SHL?
Yeah,
I'm going to say no to that one.
Yeah, I mean, if they want him to stay at home, I get that, and we're talking. I think we know how good the American Hockey League is, but the uncertainty of the American Hockey League for next year might keep him in Sweden, in the sense that we don't know when they're going to play based on everything that's going on right now. I mean, there's talk about them having their season delayed, and they need people in the building, Jan. The American Hockey League can't survive. They can't play games without people in the stands.
No, agreed. But the one thing about bringing him over, he would get used to North American style of play. He would get used to the system that the Canucks play, and as much as he could potentially do that if he did come over for training camp, playing in the farm team would allow them to get a closer look at him in the normal conditions that he may be playing with here, right, and then enable him to potentially get an earlier call up burning year one of the ELC.
Right. I mean, the thing is that it wouldn't burn the first year if he didn't play 10 games in the NHL. The Leafs brought over Nylander in 2015, I believe, in January after the World Junior, and they didn't bring him up until the following year, so it didn't burn a year of the ELC. And I think that American Hockey League experience was valuable for Nylander. I think it got him acclimated, and he played. Obviously he was born in North America, but he played most of his career in Sweden. So I think it helped him eventually be a better NHLer. But it should be interesting. I mean, he's a talented kid, and I mean, we'll see the way Vancouver goes. But all I can imagine, Russ, is Höglander playing on the same line with Pettersson.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, that'll be special, and Pettersson will really be more of the setup guy, even though he does score goals for Höglander, because Höglander doesn't make as many things happen on his own. But that'll be a nice, because that adds a little bit of greasiness to it that will help Pettersson too. Now,
Jan, you put it in your blog today, and we saw last night the joint statement from the NHL and the PA regarding, moving to phase 2 of the, basically the coming out of the pause and getting back to action. Even though it didn't nail down anything in terms of dates, in terms of like, well, we're going to play this day. I was encouraged by it because it's clear the intention is they're going to play. Now, if there are roadblocks from, municipalities, provinces in Canada, states in the U.S., those are going to be hurdles that will have to be crossed. But it's clear to me, and we're seeing it the same thing with baseball and basketball, that if they can, they're going to play.
Absolutely. I mean, all signs and all three and all, well, I would say all four, but the NFL is a little different because they're not playing until the summer anyway, when camps might open. But, the NBA has talked about coming back. I know there's a lot of talk today. Shams Charania was on FAN in New York talking about the rumors of Disney World, right? Playing the games there has been something that's come up in the NBA. For the NHL, it's gathering in certain locations, and the migration to potentially go to phase 2, which is the small gatherings beginning in mid to late May, is in line with the time frame that's been come out all week, where we've talked May 15th as being a starting point, and then going to phase 3, and then which is kind of larger gatherings. Then phase 4 is game action. All that's predicated on where we land on phase 2, and clearly as to whether or not the decline in terms of number of cases and unfortunately number of deaths continues, right, without any kind of relapse. And as you mentioned, municipalities and locales make a big difference because they're going to pick locations where there's been fewer cases, and the ability to centralize teams there, which is another hurdle that has to get tackled, as to whether or not individuals are going to be potentially sequestered for weeks or months on end.
Right. And I saw some reports of, players balking that, we're not going to stay, away from our families for weeks and months on end. But those comments seem to come more from players who are playing on teams that, in a traditional 16-team playoff scenario, wouldn't make the playoffs. Now, if they, we're going to talk about, the report from Mark Spector about a 24-team setup, which, I'm sorry, I think is, I'm not doubting the accuracy of the report from Mark. I'm questioning that particular strategy when it comes to the NHL, because the focus of it would be playing intra-division, having 6 teams in, like, say, the Atlantic, in the 3 through 6 playing against each other. And in that scenario, I mean, first of all, teams will get screwed. One team in particular that you and Russ follow, which I think is ridiculous, and teams that don't belong in the playoffs are going to be in based on the division that they're in.
Yeah, I'm not even so worried about, like, a team getting screwed. It's more about, at any point, did we look at Buffalo or Anaheim and think to ourselves, they have a chance at making the playoffs anytime recently? And the answer is no. Now, certainly with the Rangers, you did. And right up until Shesterkin got an injury, everybody was thinking it's probably going to happen. And now that there's been a pause and he would get back in there, it probably would happen if they finished out the regular season. So, yeah, it'd be bad for them. But those other 2 teams, it's just like, I get it happens in other sports, but you're making this happen. I don't like the idea that they'd be making this happen.
Right. Now, Jan, the thing is, going back to the PA and NHL statement, where the NHL is in terms of the probable course of action, I think is reasonable. I mean, I get the players not wanting to be separate from their families for 2.5, 3. Somebody said 4 months yesterday, which I don't see any scenario where somebody's going to be away from their family for 4 months. But Major League Baseball, one of the proposals is to be playing in empty stadiums like Yankee Stadium, like Citi Field.
Yeah,
I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how in their right mind they think they're going to be able to do that at all this year. It makes no sense.
So one of the things I think that I've constantly written in my blogs, and the NHL and also the other leagues have constantly said, all of this is iterative thought process. All of these are speculation and ideas that are being thrown out, right?
Sure.
And my view is the good part is yes, you are considering every possible feasibility and option, which then hopefully means that a whole bunch of the stuff is, part of my language, crap you're throwing against the wall and hoping it sticks. And then you rule it out and go, okay, we've crossed this off the list. We've gone as wacky to a certain extent as we possibly can and recognize it's not a viable option. The 2014 playoff is one that's been talked about in the past. The one thing that's the new twist is the 6 teams per division in 6, and each of those divisions in one location, and then the manner of which the tournament, quote unquote, would kind of run. And I think some of I'm getting mixed feelings, right? Some of the Ranger fans are going, ooh, we'll get a top 7 pick. We have a shot at the number 1 in a really deep draft. Let's go for it. And there are others that say, well, that kind of screws us over because, as Russ said, we were on pace potentially to make the playoffs if the season continued. Even though we've played 2 more games than the Islanders, we had a very good shot still of making the playoffs. What you now are going to have, if the regular season doesn't finish, you're going to have an unbalanced record in terms of finish based upon number of games played, what also seems kind of unfair and ridiculous not to have a flat season, regardless if it's 70, 72, or 74 games, end up with every team having really the same number of games. Yes, it's happened in baseball where teams have rainouts, they don't make them up. But here, you're arbitrarily setting okay, we're done, and let's continue moving forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I mean, first of all, just looking at if they adopt this setup, you're talking about in just using use the Atlantic Division first as the example. It would be Boston and Tampa getting a bye, and then the first round. And according to the report from Mark Spector, it would be a best of 3, a best 2 out of 3, and that would be Toronto, Buffalo, and I believe Florida and Montreal.
Right. I will say I saw a tweet yesterday from Jason Woolley, who we brought up on this show, that said, "Bring on Toronto." It was pretty funny that.
Well, actually, it's ironic that you say that because early this morning, turn on the TV and I'm flipping through the channels looking for something to watch, and the MSG, the local MSG, the one that the Sabres are on, have been showing old Sabre playoff games. And they have to be old because the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 8 years. And they showed the 99 second-round series against Boston where they clinched, and all the fans in the stands, because Toronto had already beaten, I think, Pittsburgh in the second round of the playoffs, and they were waiting. They were the likely opponent. They were the opponent if the Sabres won, and all the signs in the building were saying, "Bring on Toronto."
Yeah, I mean, it's a great rivalry. I get it. And you know what? And far be it from the league to notice that they'll benefit TV ratings wise from some of the teams that would now get in, because everybody knows Buffalo has great ratings.
Yeah, but they have great ratings even if the Sabres aren't. That's what we know.
I know. So it's like, I don't like it. I don't like it for who else would make it that we thought probably wasn't a playoff team?
Well, Montreal,
right? That's.
I mean, see, this is the thing. You can throw out all the crap that we discussed earlier in the year about, the Islanders aren't going to make the playoffs. The Oilers aren't going to make the playoffs because this bastardizes everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Montreal had 0 chance of making the playoffs. 0.
So Philip Deneau, I mean, if you're in the playoffs, are you still going to complain about being away from your family for 2.5 months? I mean,
right.
This is the thing. This is the thing. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I get the complaints from the players, but the problem I have is, okay, don't complain next year about escrow when you get beaten over the head with a 30 to 35% escrow because you didn't want to be away from your family and play playoff games.
Right. I look at this whole thing and we have to ask the bigger question. So I'll ask it. Is this still worth it to have hockey like this? Because we all miss it. So we're going to all answer as fans. I think the fan in us all answers yes. I think if we now had the ability to travel into the future in 3 years and we look back on this season, I think we're going to look back at it and rip it if this happens. I really do. I think we would say this was the best idea they could come up with, really. I don't think we would be very positive about it. We don't know how the results would be. For all we know, the results would be the same. But there's a few scenarios here, like, let's just say Anaheim wins the Cup. There hasn't been a chance for Anaheim to even be in the playoffs, I want to say, since a couple weeks after the All-Star break.
Right. Yeah, they started hot, and then they sort of mimicked Buffalo in terms of like they really weren't in it by mid-November,
right?
Realistically,
but you could say Buffalo at least had some ups and downs where it was close for a little while. Anaheim hasn't. So, like, if Anaheim wins that Cup, man, that's just gonna look bad. It just will, and I think there has to be a better solution. I think our solution was better. I think there's better solutions out there. I don't like this one. I just don't. I think.
So let's just go through it quickly here. Like I said, the Atlantic is Boston and Tampa getting the bye, Toronto, Buffalo, and Florida, Montreal. And home ice advantage is out the window because they're all going to be playing at the same. It's just going to be last change. That's going to be the only advantage. So there's no real advantage there in terms of that. In the Metro. Washington and Philly would get the byes. Pittsburgh would play the Islanders, a redo of last year.
I think you would have similar results, unfortunately, for Islander fans.
Well, no, the Islanders beat them.
Oh, that's right.
But they don't have Leonard this time, so I think it would be reversed. Right.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh will win this time. But yeah, you're right. Leonard
and Carolina, Columbus.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's really pointless to predict because in a best of 3 series, anything can happen.
Right, best of 3 series, anything can happen, and that's again, we'll have to accept the best of 3. Right, that's just the way it is. I've never liked it because things can turn quickly in a best of 3. One bad game, one injury. Your series could be essentially over. So, that one's a little tougher. I mean, I'm trying to think. The crossover year for the NHL, were they best of 5s the first round?
Best of 3.
3. They were 3. Okay, so that's what I was thinking. I still look at that year.
Are you talking about the 1 through 16 year? Like it was, yeah. Like I believe Buffalo played like Minnesota in the first round.
Okay, to me, right. And I wasn't 100%. That's why I'm glad you knew. To me, when we look back on seasons, that was one of the flukiest seasons the NHL's ever had. Agreed?
Yeah, one of them.
And so this now would be one of them, if not the top one.
Yeah, and remember the matchups that year. It was like
they were weird.
Montreal playing Edmonton in the first round. Let me just pull
it up because I remember reviewing this a while back, a few years ago, and it really was weird. There was no basis for it other than the league had tinkered with everything, so you got these weird results.
Of course, my internet's. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see. It's like you're wanting.
Yeah, you got to get the hamster to run faster on the wheel.
Okay, let's see here. No, that was the next year because Edmonton played Philadelphia and got swept in. Now that year was 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that was 5. The next year.
The next year
was fuzzy.
Yeah, the next year was 2 out of 3.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. No, maybe it was 81. I know. Okay, 78, 79 was best of 3.
Okay, let's look that up.
Yeah. All right, good. There you go. All right, it was Philadelphia, Vancouver. These are first round matchups,
which is bizarre.
Right, and you're talking one game in Philly, one game in Vancouver, one game in Philly. It was like Thursday, Saturday, Monday. So they had one day of travel in between for 3 games. LA Rangers, which
we know about that one.
Yes. Toronto, Atlanta.
Yikes.
Yeah, Pittsburgh and Buffalo.
Okay, and then how did that work out?
Pittsburgh beat Buffalo in 3 games in overtime in Game 3. And the other 4 teams had. Remember, it was I think it was a 20 or it was a 21 team league at that point.
It was 21 out of. I think it was 28 at the time.
No, I think it was 21 total.
Oh, 21 total. So 16 out of 21 that made it.
Yeah, 4. No. It was 17. Then it went to 21 when they expanded with the WHA.
How many teams were in the league at the time?
17.
17 in the league. How many made it in the playoffs?
12. 4 had buys.
Right. So that's when the joke used to come out where, basically everybody makes the playoffs, and it was like, what was it, like a 75% chance of making the playoffs, right?
And then the following year, it was 21 teams and 16 made it, so it was 80%. And
80%, right?
And right now it's 50-50, 16 out of 31, going to be 32, and people were complaining that too many teams make the playoffs, which is crap.
Imagine when it got to 80. But all right, so that first round, okay, so then who went on to the second round?
Okay, the teams that were with buys were Boston, Chicago, Montreal, and the Islanders, the division winners.
Right.
The Islanders swept the Blackhawks. The Canadiens swept the Leafs. Boston swept Pittsburgh.
A lot of lousy series, huh?
Yeah, and it was all the teams that
that had the buys all swept.
Right, they were rested.
Yeah.
And
such a bad setup. Okay, go ahead.
And the Rangers were the only team that won. Of the 4 teams, they beat the Flyers in 5 games. Then the Rangers beat the Islanders, and the Canadiens beat the Bruins in the famous Too Many Men on the Ice Don Cherry series. And then obviously the Canadiens beat the Rangers.
Right.
So,
that was a weird year, man. Like, I was happy because the Rangers made it to the Cup. I knew the Rangers weren't beating the Canadiens, but I think we proved our point that in the best of 3, the playoffs aren't very good, and then the teams that had the buys have an amazing advantage.
Yeah.
They all won and they all swept. Did they all sweep?
3 or 4.
3 or 4, right, because the Ranger one wasn't. Right, so that's amazing if you think about it.
Yeah. All 3 or 4 were swept, and the 3 were all the teams that won in the first round. The only one that bucked the trend was the Rangers, and they got to the Cup final. So, okay, in the West, because we always overlook the West, St. Louis and Colorado would get the buys in the Central. It would be Dallas versus Minnesota and Winnipeg versus Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good matchups, but again, like, if I was Vegas, I would put a no line on all these games because you don't know. Now they'll put a line on them because they're
going to put a line on everything, Mike. They're down so much money in Vegas for sports gambling. They're hoping to gamble on anything. They may gamble at some point on whether there'll be a season or not just to get some action.
Did I see something like there's lines on online betting on like greyhound races in like Australia?
Yeah, I'm sure there are, and that would make me sick to my stomach, but I'm sure there are. Yeah, they're dying. They're literally, those outlets are dying for any kind of sports to be there so they can gamble on it. I'm surprised they're not gambling on esports already.
Yeah, but that'd be too easy to fix.
That probably would be too easy to fix.
Just give one of these players a dozen chocolate chip cookies laced with hashish, and they'll throw any game you can think of.
Let's talk about one of my favorite websites, and I say that with a smile, the Players Tribune, and let's talk about Mark Scheifele's NHL awards, because I'm sure we all were wondering what Mark Scheifele was going to think about.
Yeah.
And during the pause, so he thought.
Do you have the list of his?
I do.
Because
he would just write out and become the guy to pick his awards.
Right. Okay. So he's going to be the czar of the NHL and say, "I wave my hands and here's my selections." And I know he picked Quinn Hughes for the Calder, which is not a bad pick.
Yeah.
I think he's a little biased on Connor Hellebuck. It's his team.
Well, hold on. I know we'll get to it. I'm trying to get to the winner here.
Well, though the one that I had a problem with, the one I thought was most laughable.
All right, hold on. So I have the Calder.
Okay.
He's picking Quinn Hughes over Makar.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I think Makar was the leader, and once he got hurt, I felt like Hughes did pass him. So that's fine. So that one we'll give Scheifele an okie dokie on that. The Hart Trophy.
Yeah, please.
Let's talk about this one.
Yeah.
All right. So he is talking about
Jack Eichel,
Leon Draisaitl,
mm-hmm.
Connor McDavid,
mm-hmm.
Nathan McKinnon,
mm-hmm.
David Pastrnak,
mm-hmm.
and Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
And somehow he has picked Jack Eichel.
Right. Which is absolutely clueless for this reason. He's not, first of all, he's not even the most valuable player in his own division, let alone in the league. You know, now if you buy into, okay, Draisaitl and McDavid split their vote, okay, I can buy that. But
only to a degree.
Right. But here's the problem I have. Of that list of 5, what does Jack Eichel not have in common with the other 4? The other 4 are on playoff teams, and Jack Eichel is not.
Right. I'm going to look past even that one, Mike, and I'm going to go with the obvious one. He basically said, but Jack doesn't take a single shift off. That's why he's my MVP.
God.
Do any of those guys take a shift off? Like, good for Jack Eichel, because he is on a team that's not great to not take a shift off, and he is a tremendous player.
Right.
There is no way on earth Jack Eichel is going to win it over McDavid or Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I thought this is clearly Eichel's best
and
year.
Pastrnak could win it too, by the way.
Yeah, I thought this was Eichel's best year. I saw him for about 10 or 15 games in person. He's at the top of his game, but at best, and when you say, well, he's being mentioned or he's in the conversation, that doesn't mean he's going to win it. It means he's 7th or 8th. So it's like, okay, do I think he's a great player? Yes. Do I think he's Buffalo's best player, a franchise player? Yes. Is he the MVP? Not a chance in hell.
Yeah.
No friggin' way. And of course, I'm going to go down this road. You can make a better case for Austin Matthews being the MVP than you can. And I'm not saying he should be, but you can make a better case for him on a pace for 50 goals on a team that's in the playoffs than you can for Jack Eichel. The only thing in Jack Eichel's favor is the fact that he's doing it almost all by himself. But
he is doing it all by himself. But again, the numbers from the other guys are just too overwhelming. Like, how many goals was Pastrnak going to end up with?
Over 50, obviously. He had 40. He had 43 or 44 going into the break, I believe.
And Eichel was in the 30s, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Like, there's no way Eichel would even be the number 3 guy.
Yeah,
he might be the number 5 guy out of those guys.
Yeah, Pastrnak and Ovechkin were tied at 48. Matthews at 47. Eichel, I believe Eichel was in the top 10 in scoring, but he was not up there in terms of goals. He had 36. He had 78 points.
Right.
So, I mean, he's having a great year, and if the season played out, he probably gets to 90. He wouldn't have been the leading scorer in the league. He wouldn't be the leading scorer in terms of goals. He wouldn't be even the 3rd highest amount of goals in the division.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Go ahead.
So now we go to the Vezina.
Okay.
And I think Connor Hellebuck is in the conversation, but he leads this off because he's like, I got this buddy, Julian Melchiori, who was playing in the AHL, and he ruined. If you were going to want us to take you seriously, don't tell us buddy stories about one of your teammates that you're now going to give the hardware to, as he put it. Don't do that because it doesn't look good. He might win it. He might.
Right.
But you're automatically discounting Carey Price, who did have a great year. He's only 4 wins behind on a Montreal team that we could make an argument is nearly impossible to win games.
Right.
So he's not that far ahead of him. He's ahead of him on save percentage. I get it. But still, Carey Price had a great year. Vasilevsky, same thing. Now, Vasilevsky's got 35 wins.
Yeah.
He's also got only 3 shutouts to Hellebuck's 6, but he also has 4 assists. So Hellebuck's got 2. But he has 35 wins. So, again, you can't discount it. His save percentage is .917. Remember, we don't know that the season is over yet.
Right.
So I didn't like the way Scheifele presented that. Like, yeah, let's just give it to Hellebuck because he's just the best. There's a race there. He is not the runaway leader, but I like him. But it just doesn't look right when a teammate is saying that and the way he said it. Didn't love that.
No, we know that everybody is looking for content, and this is just basically, something to stir the pot a little bit. It's opinion. It's just, please. It's like saying, okay, yeah, rookie of the year should be Ilya Mikheyev.
Right.
It's like, okay, he had a good rookie year, and then he got hurt, and okay, he's not anywhere close to Makar. He's not anywhere close to Victor Olofsson. He's not anywhere close to Quinn Hughes. He's a good rookie. He's not the rookie of the year. Jack Eichel is a great player. He's not the MVP. So, whatever. The other, just to finish off what we were talking, and then we'll end the show early. Eck is encountering some weather
problems. We have a storm going on here too, but it's not as bad as what he's getting.
Yeah. In the West, in the Pacific, Vegas and Edmonton, what a joke, will get the buys. Calgary versus Anaheim and Vancouver versus Arizona. Now, there you go. Anaheim doesn't belong in there. Arizona doesn't belong in there. 24 is a joke.
Yeah.
20, okay. At least the wild cards, you have, 4 best of 3 series to narrow it down to 8 teams in each conference. And, you make up for the fact that these teams, for teams that were 1 or 2 points out, it's not fair to have them miss because of the imbalance in games. So you do it that way. But the problem is that to do that is going to entail teams moving from one bubble city to another bubble city to play the wild card series, and then go back to the first bubble city to play in the first round of the playoffs. They want to avoid that, so they're setting up a divisional setup. I think it'd be probably more fair if you had the team that won the division get the bye, and 2 through 5 and 3 versus 4, and they play a best of 5 series. Mm-hmm. All you're doing now is essentially you're opening up any team that finished in 3rd place to, getting eliminated in 2 straight, and that I just don't think it's fair.
No, I don't either. We do have a couple more things. I see some breaking news.
Go ahead.
And some non-breaking news. The non-breaking news, I guess Ellie Friedman reported on the 29th that the draft won't be in Montreal. It'll be online. I don't think that's really breaking news. I think we all pretty much knew that.
Yeah,
we knew it wasn't going to be in Montreal. That's for sure. And we pretty much knew chances are it was going to be online. So now it's confirmed.
And especially since Montreal is one of the hot spots of COVID-19 right now. So, the draft will eventually be there. And hopefully this will all be in the rear view mirror when that happens. Otherwise, it won't be there. But because I was looking forward to going to Montreal. But yeah, no, not a surprise. They're going to follow the NFL. They're going to have a virtual draft. So probably will the NBA and Major League Baseball. So that's not a big surprise.
So here's an interesting one from Jason Martinez, who I do the Stick to Hockey podcast with.
Yes.
He said Ivan Provorov has been skating at a private rink in Wilkes-Barre while staying with his billet family. So that's interesting. So he's been skating the entire time. If you remember, I told you and had written about Tim Stützle, who was getting one-on-one training from a guy at a place where he could open it up for him and do it with him. And so you wonder why more NHLers didn't have contacts like this to be able to do this. Very smart from Provorov's perspective to keep himself going. And he is a smart kid. Like this is the way you do it, man. I mean, I would have thought by now he'd be living on his own, but I guess because he knew that his billet family was near the rink, he was probably like, hey, can I stay there so I could keep practicing and I don't have to break any travel rules by, traveling back and forth. And they were probably happy to do it because he's a great kid. Boy, that was just, you got to really hand it to him.
Well, Jack Campbell, the Leafs backup, was interviewed this afternoon, a conference call, and he was asked about some of the Swedish players who have been skating over in Sweden and whether they're going to have an unfair advantage because they've been skating all along and most of the NHL players haven't. And while he's answering the question, I'm thinking to myself, well, those players are going to have to go through 2 weeks of quarantine. So that's going to sort of balance it out. For as long as they've been skating, the fact that they're going to be sitting around and doing nothing,
sitting for 14 days after that.
Right. So and right. And then the thing is that the NHLers, they might be skating while that's going on, depending on when the European players come over and when the NHL players can go to the practice facilities. Maybe they come over 2 weeks before and everybody will be skating at the same time. Then the advantage will still be in the Swedes' hands. But I don't know. I mean, let's just say this, though: those who could skate, those who could stay in shape, their advantage is going to be so much.
It'll be massive. It will
be completely massive. And that could cause a team like Boston, who was an overwhelming favorite to be, somebody who advanced and have a good chance at winning the Stanley Cup. If all their guys were, not having any
down,
right there, that could scuttle their chances big time. So
it could. Scuttle's another good word. Good for you. One more story. So last couple of days, the NWHL did have their draft. Now that was literally online. When Elliot's talking about the NHL draft being online, it'll be similar to the way the NFL handled it.
Right.
That's the way they'll do it. Now this one was literally online. It was on Twitter, and what they did was they had different people like Megan Chaika basically announced the first pick for the Toronto organization. They had different people in the first round do that. So I interviewed the 4th overall pick, Saroya Tinker, and she plays for the Metropolitan Riveters, a defenseman. She's Canadian, but she was playing at Yale. So I was talking a little ECAC hockey with her, which is nice because I cover ECAC out of Princeton. And so that was good. But she's a shot blocker, man. Like, that's tough. And the fact that she is willing to do that is amazing. And that's something where right now in that league, that's very valuable. She has an offensive side, right? But the fact that she can block shots, their GM felt like, hey, you know what? It limits chances. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what hockey league we're talking about on earth. They all want to limit chances.
Yep.
And so defensemen are worth gold in all these leagues now. It's proven. And so that's why she's the 4th overall pick too. So congrats to her. People could read the rest on Sportsology if they'd like to, but I enjoyed it because for me, it was like, okay, I like interviewing draft prospects. That was great. And I love the excitement that they have, everything else, because that is their life dream. It was fun.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the furor over the fact that the Toronto franchise doesn't have a name yet has not dissipated, and I'm sure people are protesting in the streets that they don't have a name yet.
Right.
Yeah, they're side by side with the people who want to end the shutdown.
Well, Seattle doesn't have a name yet either.
So there you go. All right, we will be back.
Seattle get a name, please.
Oh, no, there was an announcement yesterday that it is going to be announced very soon.
Very soon,
and that they were just doing their I'm sorry, you've had a year
A year is enough for due diligence. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but unless the name that you had chosen is the Seattle Coronas, and you had to change it because of what's going on right now, there's no reason to wait this long.
It's just unbelievable.
I mean, come on. Anyway, so we'll be back tomorrow at 1:00 with Kevin Allen to discuss. I'm sure he'll have some good insights on a number of things going on in the league. We'll have Eck back. Hopefully, he'll have his power back by then. For Russ Cohen, for the departed Jan Levine, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.